The dust at Camp Phoenix never really settled. It hung in the air like a second skin, sticking to sweat, boots, and breath. Soldiers moved in and out of tents like clockwork, some wide-eyed and fresh, others carrying too many ghosts in their packs. Amid the organized chaos, the med tent was one of the few places where calm lived. It smelled like iodine and sweat, the sound of heart monitors humming like crickets in a distant field. And that's where she was every day, without fail. They called her Mills. No first name, no background stories. Just Mills. She wasn't the loud type. She didn't shout like the other medics or brag about how many tourniquets she'd applied in under a minute. She didn't flirt, didn't smoke, didn't hang out in the break yard after shift. She worked. She worked like she'd done it 1,000 times before and knew she'd do it 1,000 more. Smooth hands, firm grip, eyes that didn't blink when blood sprayed or bones snapped under pressure. That was Mills. But outside the med tent, nobody really noticed her. To most of the base, she was just the girl in the scrubs. New guys thought she was a civilian contractor or an assistant. A few even mistook her for someone doing medical paperwork. Nobody thought to ask, but the funny part was, Mills didn't mind. She liked it that way. She liked moving through the camp unseen, hearing everything, saying nothing. She picked up intel in mess lines, read body language like a language of its own, and always sat facing the door. People assumed it was habit. It wasn't. When she wasn't stitching someone up or checking vitals, Mills cleaned. Not like a janitor, like a soldier. Gear was always lined perfectly, scalpels laid out like rifles before inspection. She scrubbed the tables herself, even though privates offered to do it. She said it helped her think. Truth was, it kept her hands busy. Idle hands remembered too much. Once, a private cracked a joke about her never smiling. She just tilted her head and kept wrapping a sprained ankle. That night, he found a signed training manual on his cot, with one passage underlined, "The calmest person in the room is often the most dangerous." He never joked again. Mills had a rhythm. Wake up at 0500, run 5 miles. Shower, med tent. Check inventory. Then another shift, or 2. Then weights. Then range drills. Alone. Always alone. The only person she ever really spoke to was Sergeant Dunlop, the head medic, and even he admitted he didn't know much about her. She just showed up one day, papers already stamped, credentials spotless. "She's good," he said. "How good?" Someone asked. Dunlop just looked out across the field and replied, "Better than most." People watched her sometimes. Not out of attraction, at least not after the first week. She had that look, don't even try, but more out of curiosity. She was like a puzzle missing its box cover. Everyone saw the edges, the cool exterior, the competence, but nobody knew what the full picture was. There were rumors, of course. Someone said she was ex-Ranger. Someone else said she'd worked with Delta for a short stint. One guy swore he saw her in a photo from a base in Mosul standing behind a commander during a Medal of Honor ceremony. But nobody could prove it. When a soldier asked her once, "You ever see combat?" she simply replied, "Everyone's seen something." And that was that. Some of the younger medics idolized her. They tried to keep pace during training runs, but gave up halfway through. They asked her for advice during trauma drills, and she gave it short, sharp, efficient. She didn't mentor. She didn't lecture. She just performed. The truth was, Mills had seen more than something. She'd seen bodies so torn apart, they barely resembled humans. She'd held dying men's hands while enemy rounds zipped overhead. She'd crawled through ditches with blood pooling inside her boots. But she didn't wear it on her sleeve. She didn't wear anything, not even her combat medic badge. Her uniform was bare. No unit patches, no cabs, nothing but her name, That's what confused everyone the most. If she really was this experienced, why hide it? Why not show off the stripes, the ribbons, the scars? But Mills understood something most didn't quiet his power. And nothing scared a fool more than someone who didn't need to talk to prove she could win. Mills had a cot in the far corner of the tent, tucked behind a rack of 4 bags. She slept there most nights, never locked the footlocker, kept the single. Photo inside, an old man with steel-gray eyes and a war medal pinned crookedly on his chest. Her grandfather, Vietnam. He was the reason she joined. He taught her to shoot, to sharpen knives, and to shut up and observe. People run their mouths when they're scared, he'd told her. If you stay quiet, they tell you everything. She lived by it, and it was that same quietness that made what happened next so jarring. Because no one at Camp Phoenix ever expected her to snap. No one ever imagined that beneath that soft voice and surgical precision was a beast just waiting to be unchained. But they were about to find out. 8 seconds would be all it took. 8 seconds to rewrite everything they thought they knew. And it would all start with one man grabbing her wrist. It started like any other tense afternoon. The sun glared down like a spotlight from hell, and the air crackled with static and sweat. Around 14:30, 2 Humvees roared through the outer gate. Both were beat to hell bullet holes, cracked windshields, red smears down the side panels. Soldiers spilled out, some yelling, others limp. One man screamed about his leg. Another had half a cheek missing. Mills didn't blink Dot. She was already waiting. Dot, no one knew how she always timed it right. Maybe she heard the engine pitch. Maybe she just sensed chaos. But when it came, she moved fast. Faster than anyone. "Litter team, now?" She barked, kneeling beside the bleeding corporal. She applied pressure with one hand and cut away his. Shredded cargo pants with the other. Blood pulsed in steady rhythm. Femoral artery bad. She didn't flinch. Just clamped, packed, and moved. One of the younger medics hesitated. "Don't freeze," she growled without looking. "Either help or get out." The kid moved. Fast. Dot within 2 minutes. Mills had 3 soldiers stabilized. 1-4 was hanging from a mop handle. Another soldier's head propped up with folded towels. It didn't matter. She didn't need perfect tools. She just needed people not to die. Dot. Then came the yelling. Dot. It started just outside the tent. Slurred voices, heavy boots, and the kind of laughter that made even seasoned soldiers tense up. 4 men, all from a visiting National Guard unit, stormed in like they owned the place. Not medevaced, not called, just drunk, arrogant, and pissed off. "Where's Grant?" One of them barked. "That bastard owes me $100. No one answered. They started pacing the aisles, knocking things over as they went. One flipped a tray of gauze. Another leaned over a patient, like he was inspecting livestock. The corporal with the leg wound groaned in pain. Mills stepped in. Calmly, slowly, she always moved like a predator in tall grass. "This is a medical zone," she said flatly. "You're interfering with treatment. Step outside." The largest of them, square-jawed and wearing a smug grin, took a step toward her. He was a head taller, twice as wide, and clearly used to being the loudest guy in the room. "Oh, we've got a nurse with an attitude," he said, smirking. "How about you go fetch me a soda, sweetheart?" Laughter erupted. One of them mock saluted her. Mills didn't move. Her eyes just scanned. She wasn't looking at his face. She was measuring. Stance, shoulder rotation, wrist placement. She was calculating. "I won't ask again," she said. "Out. Now." The laughter stopped. Square Jaw stepped closer, testing her. The room fell quiet, except for the slow beep of a heart monitor and the buzz of a fly trapped near the ceiling. "Light." Then he did it. He reached out and grabbed her wrist. For the briefest moment, time hung still like the world itself paused to breathe. That's when everything snapped. Mills twisted her arm, using his own momentum. The wrist in his hand became leverage, and she spun under his elbow. With a brutal crack, the joint dislocated, and he howled in pain, knees buckling. Before the others could react, she dropped low, driving a palm strike into the second guy's solar plexus. He folded. She yanked his shirt, pulled him forward, and used his weight to toss him onto a supply table with a thunderous crash. The third tried to punch her, big mistake. She parried, pivoted, and sent her knee into his inner thigh. As he staggered, she swept his back foot and brought him down, planting her boot on his spine. The fourth turned to run. She was faster, 3 strides. A leap. She caught him by the collar and slammed him into the tent's support beam. His forehead bounced off the pole. He dropped like a sack of rocks. 8 seconds. That was all it took. The tent was dead silent. Patients, medics, even the younger soldiers froze. Not a whisper. Not a breath. The only sound was the groaning of the 4 men, now lying scattered across the med tent floor. Like broken furniture, Mills didn't say a word. She adjusted the sleeve of her scrubs, stepped over the unconscious one, and calmly picked up a pack. Gauze that had fallen. Her pulse steady. Breathing controlled. She looked like she'd just finished her shift, not like she'd disabled 4 grown men in hand-to-hand combat. The wounded corporal, still pale from blood loss, whispered, "Holy hell." Someone finally moved. A medic rushed toward the collapsed drunkards, trying to check pulses and vitals. Another called the MPs. Word traveled fast. The CO burst in moments later, confused by the silence. He took one look at the scene, 4 men, groaning and bleeding on the floor, and Mills standing there calmly holding surgical tape and didn't know what to say. "Mills?" He started, but the words dried up in his throat. She didn't respond. She didn't need to. The CO walked over to one of the attackers and noticed the dislocated shoulder and boot print on his back. He raised an eyebrow. Did she do all this? Nobody answered. They didn't have to. Mills finally spoke, not to explain, not to apologize, but to command, "Get them out of my tent." Her voice was steady, not raised, not shaking. Just final. The CO nodded slowly and waved the MPs inside. They hesitated too, not from confusion, but from fear, not of the drunk soldiers, but of her. And just like that, Mills went from being the girl nobody noticed to the name no one would forget. And this was only the beginning. The MPs dragged the 4 men out of the tent like bags of trash after a thunderstorm. One was conscious enough to curse under his breath. Mills didn't react. She was already checking the tourniquet on the corporal again, making sure blood flow was still controlled. The room remained eerily quiet. Nobody spoke. No one dared. The younger medics watched her like she was a ghost, something they'd seen before, but never truly understood until now. She didn't look angry. She didn't even look proud. She looked normal, unbothered, like it hadn't even happened. Like breaking 4 men in front of an audience was just part of her shift. And that silence? It echoed louder than any gunfire. Private Jensen, barely out of his teens and still learning how to tie off a bleeding artery, stood frozen with a roll of gauze in his hand. His lips parted, but no words came. He'd seen documentaries about military heroes. He'd watched interviews of Navy SEALs, Green Berets, Rangers. But they all looked like warriors. They had muscles, tattoos, grizzled beards, deep voices. Mills didn't fit that image at all. She looked like someone who could disappear in a crowd. And yet, in that moment, she seemed larger than the entire tent. Finally, Dunlop, the head medic, spoke up. "Mills, You good?" She gave a small nod. Back to work. That was it. Just 2 words. She turned back to her patient, her movements calm and deliberate. The spell was broken. Everyone moved again, but different now. Like something had shifted in the air. Like they were suddenly aware they'd been working next to a weapon wrapped in scrubs outside the med tent. The story spread like wildfire. It started with a corporal who'd been getting his hand stitched. He told a buddy. That buddy told. Squad. By dinner, it had reached the barracks. By midnight, it was all over the base. Some versions had her taking out 6 men. Others claimed she choked one unconscious with 4 tubing. The number didn't matter. The message was clear. Mills wasn't just a medic. She was something else entirely. In the CO's office, her file was reopened. He'd seen it before, skimmed it when she arrived. It hadn't stood out then. He'd been short on medics, and her transfer papers were clean. But now, as he flipped through the pages with a deeper eye, he realized what he'd missed. 3 combat deployments. 2 Bronze Stars. 1 Joint Service. Commendation Medal with Valor. Qualified in Tactical Combat Casualty Care, Urban Warfare, and Hostile Environment Field Medicine. Certified in Krav Maga and Level 2 Army Combatives. And at the bottom of the stack, a red-stamped letter from her last commanding officer. Sergeant Mills operates with precision under fire. Do not underestimate her due to silence or stature. She is trained, capable, and lethal if provoked. The CO sat back in his chair. He rubbed his jaw, then muttered, "We've had a ghost sitting in our tent this whole time." Back in the med tent, things were different now. Soldiers nodded to her as they passed. Officers who once ignored her began making eye contact. One even called her "ma'am" by mistake. But Mills didn't react. She continued her routine, as always: inventory, patient checks, supply management. Her cot remained in a corner. Her photo of her grandfather still tucked under her pillow. Her hands still moved with surgical efficiency. But now, every motion drew attention. She didn't wear a new patch. Didn't pin on her ribbons. She didn't need to. The base had seen what she was capable of. No uniform could say more. Later that week, one of the newer medics approached her during lunch. A young woman, nervous, balancing her tray with shaky hands. "Hey, I was wondering, would you train with me? Like combatives or something?" Mills looked up, her expression unreadable. "You want to fight?" "No, not like, yeah, just I want to be ready." "Like you." Mills stared at her for a long second. Then she nodded. "Tomorrow, 600. Bring gloves." That's how it started. Every morning, a few more people joined her. First 2, then 5, then 12. They didn't come to watch. They came to learn. Mills didn't talk much, but her instruction was razor sharp. Efficient. Brutal. She didn't teach them to win fights. She taught them to survive them. Word reached other units. Even visiting Special Forces personnel came by to watch her spar. One ranger said afterward, "She doesn't fight like Army. She fights like someone who's been outnumbered and still walked away." By the end of the week, soldiers began referring to her by a new name. Not Mills, not that medic. They started calling her 8. Because of the 8 seconds. Because that's all it took. Someone even made a patch. Black background. Red cross in the middle. 4 tally marks slashed across it. Below it, the number 8 stitched in blood-red thread. They tried to give it to her. She declined. "I don't need patches," she said. But they pinned it to the med tent wall anyway. Right beside the clock. A reminder, not of violence, but of readiness. And as the days passed, Mills returned to being what she had always been: precise, quiet, unstoppable. Only now, when she entered a room, It didn't go quiet out of disrespect or disinterest. It went quiet out of respect. Because now they knew. Mills wasn't just a medic. She was the medic. The one who could heal you with her hands or break you with them. By the time the sun rose 2 days later, every squad on base knew her name. 8 had replaced Mills in whispered conversations and mess hall jokes. But they weren't mocking. There was weight behind that number now. 8 seconds. Of precision, silence, and unrelenting force. No one laughed when her name came up. They leaned in. They lowered their voices. She still woke up before dawn. Still ran 5 miles. Still cleaned the med tent like a ritual. But the air had shifted. Now, when she walked past a group of soldiers, conversations stopped not out of fear, but out of something close to awe. It was Sergeant Dunlop who finally spoke the question. Everyone was thinking. He stood outside the tent with his coffee mug in hand, staring at the dusty field. Who the hell is she really? Private Jensen stood beside him, arms crossed, still wearing a bruise on his forearm from training drills with her that morning. She says she's a combat medic, Jensen replied, but she fights like a Tier 1 operator. Dunlop took a sip of his coffee and didn't answer. He'd worked alongside medics for 15 years, tough ones, smart ones, burned out ones, but none like her. None who moved like every movement was a kill switch. None who seemed so calm. After doing what most couldn't even imagine, he pulled her personnel file from the office that afternoon. He'd read it before, just like the CO had. Back then, it felt routine. But now, he combed through every line. Born, Akron, Ohio. Enlisted at 19, top 1% in her medical class. Certified in combat trauma, surgical response, and urban field rescue. 3 deployments in conflict zones. 0 Article 15s. Fluent in Dari and basic Pashto. Scores in the 98th percentile on hand-to-hand combat assessments. 3 confirmed battlefield saves under enemy fire. What stood out most was a line from a redacted field report. Displayed operational control and combat efficiency equivalent to SOF medics. Conducted evacuation under active fire with no casualties. Mission success attributed to her intervention. And another entry, hand-scribbled in faded ink. Declined commendation. Said medals don't stop bleeding. That explained a lot. Dunlop put the folder down and sat back in his chair. She wasn't hiding anything. She just didn't feel the need to explain herself. That evening, 2 MPs approached her outside the tent. One of them, tall, bald, and looking uncomfortable, cleared his throat before speaking. Sergeant Mills, command would like you to report in for debriefing regarding the incident. She didn't blink. Now? Yes, ma'am. She wiped her hands on a rag, tossed it into the bucket, and followed without hesitation. No questions. No nervous energy. Just that same grounded, quiet stillness. Inside the office, the CO was waiting. So was a JAG officer. The air was thick with formality. Take a seat, the CO said. She remained standing. The JAG officer opened a file and adjusted his glasses. This is about the incident involving the 4 National Guard soldiers in the medical tent. They were interfering with medical treatment, she said evenly. I asked them to leave. They refused. One grabbed me. I responded appropriately. Appropriately? The CO repeated. Mills met his eyes. I neutralized the threat with minimum force. None of them required critical care. One of the wounded patients could have died if they had remained. The JAG officer frowned, but the CO looked impressed despite himself. Mills, he said, we've got a dozen witness reports saying you took out 4 men in 8 seconds without a single weapon. You sure you haven't trained with any special units? She was silent for a beat. I trained with whoever let me in the room. There was no bravado in her voice. Just truth. The CO leaned back and exchanged a look with the JAG. This isn't a reprimand. Hell, the reports are stacked in your favor. You're not in trouble. We just wanted to understand who exactly we've got working our med tent. She gave a half shrug. You've got a combat medic, that's all. The JAG closed his folder. You're cleared, Sergeant Mills. She nodded and walked out without another word. The next morning, the CO held a closed-door meeting with command staff. He didn't share everything. Mills wouldn't have wanted that, but he made one thing clear. From now on, she gets full authority over her space. Anyone messes with the med tent, they deal with me. That was the end of it. Back in the tent, things changed. Patients behaved better. Medics listened closer. The wounded stared at her with a strange kind of gratitude, like being treated by her meant more than just a chance at survival. Like maybe they were in the presence of someone who had cheated death and come back wiser. And every now and then, a visiting unit would drop by and glance her way, nudging each other. Her, they'd whisper. That's 8. Late one night, Dunlop found her sitting on the cot in the corner, the tent dim and quiet. She was cleaning her combat boots with surgical alcohol. Did you ever want something else? He asked. She didn't look up. Like what? I don't. No, recognition, promotion, a job stateside. She paused, then set the boot down. I didn't join for the medals. I joined because no one came to help my grandfather when he needed it. I joined because I wanted to be the person who shows up. Dunlop nodded slowly. Well, you've done that. And then some. She gave him a rare smile, small, tired, and fleeting. He turned to leave, but her voice stopped him. Hey, Sarge? Yeah? 8 seconds is just a number. It's what I had to do. But that doesn't define me. He gave her a soft look. Maybe not. But it's why they finally see you. She didn't reply. Just returned to scrubbing her boots, because she knew the truth. She wasn't here for the stories. She was here for the wounded, the dying, the ones who couldn't fight for themselves. When all hell broke loose again, and it would, she'd be right there, moving silently, hands steady, heart locked in. Because 8 wasn't just a nickname anymore. It was a warning. The morning after the debrief, a package arrived. No one knew who delivered it. No return address. Just a plain manila envelope sitting on Mills' cot, its edges stained with dust. She spotted it right after morning inventory. It had no label, no instructions, just her last name written in small, careful letters. She opened it slowly. Inside was a single cloth patch, black fabric, crimson red stitching dot in the center, a red cross. Beneath it, 4 tally marks, diagonal slashes like something carved into a weapon stock. Below that, 1 number. 8. There was no note. But she didn't need 1 dot. It was from them, the old team, her last unit. The one she never talked about. The one she still dreamed of some nights, when the diesel generators roared too loud and she woke, gripping the edge of her cot like a trigger. They knew. Word must have traveled fast. Military rumor networks move faster than official comes. Someone told someone, and her name made its way back to the ones who knew her before she became a ghost. She held the patch for a long time, just stared at it. Then folded it gently and placed it in her footlocker. She wasn't going to wear it. Not because it didn't mean anything, because it meant too much. Patches were for uniforms. She didn't need a symbol to remind her who she was. She carried that truth in her bones, in her scars, in the steady rhythm of her pulse when chaos struck. But that afternoon, someone else saw it. Private Jensen had been cleaning up the back corner and caught a glimpse of the patch as she knelt to grab fresh gauze. Hey, he said carefully. What's that? Mills didn't answer. He took a step closer. The patch. Is that for what happened? No, she said, her voice low. It's for everything before that. He stared. You don't wear it? I don't need to. Word of the patch. Spread faster than she expected. By nightfall, copies of it were popping up on field bags and notebooks. One soldier stenciled it on the back of his helmet with chalk. Another had it drawn on the inside flap of his armor plate. No one dared wear it officially. It wasn't sanctioned. But that didn't matter. It wasn't just a tribute. It was a reminder that quiet didn't mean weak. That unnoticed didn't mean unskilled. That the one who saved you might also be the one who could kill without hesitation. The movement wasn't loud. It wasn't organized. It was organic. Real. Respect didn't need orders. In the following days, more medics started requesting extra combat drills. Not the mandatory stuff, the serious training. Hand-to-hand, tactical triage under pressure. They wanted to be like her. They wanted to stop freezing when the bleeding got bad. They wanted to know they could handle it. Mills didn't turn them away. She didn't preach. Didn't build a syllabus. She trained them the same way she trained herself, under fire, under stress, without excuses. By the second week, the CO took notice. He requested a sit-down. She arrived at his office at exactly 0700. Boots cleaned, uniform crisp. He gestured for her to sit. I've been hearing about what you're doing, he said. She said nothing. He tapped his pen. You've started something. Something good. You've turned that whole medical staff into fighters. Into soldiers. They were already soldiers, she replied. They just forgot. The CO nodded slowly. I want to formalize it. Make your drills official. Maybe even build a combat medic readiness program. You'd lead it. She didn't answer right away. I didn't come here to teach, she said after a pause. No, he agreed. You came here to serve. And you've done that. But they need more than a medic. They need someone to show them how to survive. She exhaled slowly. All right. That afternoon, a bulletin went up. New program. Close quarter combat for medics. Lead instructor. SGT Mills voluntary. 600 training yard. C. Be the reason someone lives. Or the reason someone never gets the chance to take a life. The first session had 7 people. The next, 15. Within a month, half the medical corps was showing up before sunrise, some dragging their feet, others moving with purpose. But all of them came, and every session started with the same words. You're not just healers. You're battlefield ghosts. You move where bullets fly, and you patch what no one else can. You don't get to freeze. You don't get to panic. Because the second you do, someone dies. No one forgot those words, because they weren't just from a leader. They were from someone who had lived it. Late one evening, as drills wrapped up and soldiers dragged themselves back to the showers, Mills sat alone at the edge of the training mat. Sweat soaked through her undershirt. Dust clung to her skin. Sergeant Dunlop walked up with 2 cold waters and handed her one. Didn't think you'd say yes to the program, he said, sitting beside her. Neither did I. He cracked his bottle open. I hear people call you. 8 now. She took a sip, then nodded. You like it? She thought for a long moment. It's not who I am, she said. It's what I did? That's fair. But what you did changed everything. She looked out at the empty field. I didn't want recognition. I know, Dunlop said. But now people listen. Now they see you? She didn't respond right away. Then she said, they see a number. Not the years, not the nights, not the blood. No, Dunlop said, but they're learning. Because of you. She glanced toward the footlocker in the tent, the one where the patch still rested, folded and untouched. Maybe one day she'd wear it. Maybe not, but right now, it was enough to know that it existed. That somewhere, someone thought she was worth remembering. Not because of 8 seconds, but because she never stopped showing up. 2 months into the new program, Mills found herself facing a different kind of battlefield, not one marked by bullet casings or blast craters, but by protocol. Politics and perception. Headquarters sent word. An inspection team was arriving. The directive came down with subtle pressure. Maintain normal operations. No unsanctioned activities. No deviation from standard medic conduct. Translation: stop whatever rogue program you've started before it causes embarrassment. Mills wasn't surprised. She'd seen it before. The higher-ups liked innovation until it challenged tradition. Her drills weren't in the manual. Her tactics weren't approved. And her nickname? 8. That wasn't something a brass desk could explain to a senator during a base tour. Morning, she skipped PT and went straight to the armory. The CO met her there. He looked conflicted. They're saying you're turning medics into fighters. She shrugged. I'm turning them into survivors. They're not combat troops. They're targets with red crosses. The CO sighed. They don't want medics who carry knives. Then they don't want them to come home. Silence. Then, what are you going to do? Mills looked him dead in the eyes. Keep teaching. The inspection team arrived 2 days later. 4 civilians in crisp suits. 1 retired general with silver hair. A notepad brigade. They didn't head to the med tent first. They went to the drill yard. And they saw what they weren't expecting. 20 medics in full kit. Knees bent, sweat pouring, hands grappling in coordinated movements. 1 trainee, a skinny corporal named Vance, disarmed a mock attacker with a perfect sweep, got to his feet, and began triaging a wounded Parker while shouting commands. Mills circled the field, calm, watchful, precise. The retired general pulled the CO aside. What is this? The CO braced himself. It's the Combat Medic Readiness Program. This isn't Army doctrine. No, sir. And you're allowing this? I'm backing it. The general looked back at the field, then said quietly, She the one from Bravo? The CO blinked. You know her? I read the file. Didn't believe it. He paused. Now I do. They didn't shut it down. They couldn't. Because for all their politics, the truth was undeniable. Mills' program was working. Morale was up. Response times during drills were down. Even cross-unit respect was growing. Combat soldiers were volunteering to join her sessions just to keep up. Still, the team took notes, whispered concerns. Bureaucracy would come, eventually. But Mills had learned long ago, do the work first, fight the paperwork later. Then came the call no one wanted. Convoy. Ambush. 12 miles outside the Simbi. Multiple wounded. Limited comes. Enemy. Retreat uncertain. Mills didn't wait for orders. She loaded the truck herself, grabbed the team. 5 medics, 2 drivers, 3 packs of blood, 4 trauma kits, no backup. As they raced down the dirt road, dust choking the air, her pulse didn't spike. It sharpened. They reached the kill zone in 23 minutes. It was worse than expected. 2 Humvees wrecked. 1 flipped. 1 burning. Scattered soldiers crawling for cover. Gunfire echoed in the hills. A sniper was still out there. Mills didn't hesitate. She leapt from the truck and dashed straight into the chaos, bullets cracking the ground near her boots. She moved like a ghost fast. Low, intentional. Her hands found the first wounded soldier thigh wound, arterial bleed. She clamped it, sealed it, and moved on. Behind her, her medics fanned out with precision. They weren't panicked. They were prepared. Every second counted. Mills ducked behind the flipped Humvee and found a corporal unconscious, pulse faint. Tourniquet. Pressure. Burn wrap. Then a shadow moved. She looked up. Hilltop. Flash of light rifle scope. Sniper. She yelled, but there was no cover. Then she did something no one expected. She stood right In the open, hands up. Not in surrender and challenge. She was bait. She knew it, but she also knew the sniper's position was unstable. Close enough to engage, but exposed if distracted. She counted. 1, 2. The shot came. Just missed her shoulder. Before the echo faded, Dunlop, hidden near the ridge, fired. 2 rounds. Clean. The sniper dropped. She dropped right after, rolled, and resumed care. By the time backup arrived, 5 soldiers had been saved. Because of her team's speed, because of their grit, because of the training no one had wanted. Back at base, the team rolled in covered in grime, blood, and victory. The med tent was silent when they returned. Then someone started, clapping. Slow, rhythmic. And another joined in, and another. Within seconds, the entire camp mechanics, infantry, comes. Intel was applauding, not just for survival, for what they became. That night, the inspection team filed their report. One line stood out: unconventional leadership, unorthodox methods, exceptional results. Mills sat on her cot, alone, peeling off the boots she hadn't unlaced in 16 hours. She reached into her footlocker. This time, she didn't hesitate. She pulled out the patch, ran her thumb across the crimson thread, and then carefully, she attached it to her sleeve. Not for show, not for approval, but because every medic under her command had earned the right to see it. To know it was real. To believe they could be more. And to remember that one day, when no one else could move, she did. 8 seconds, 4 men, 100 moments that followed, and a war she kept fighting, not with bullets, but with belief. 3 weeks after the ambush, the desert winds shifted. The heat wasn't the same, nor the quiet. Something hung in the air. Not danger, not relief. Change. For once, Mills had time to breathe. Her medics were sharper than ever. They didn't wait for permission to take charge. They didn't flinch under pressure. And most importantly, they didn't see themselves as just medics anymore. They saw themselves as first to run in. But that morning, Sergeant Dunlop approached her with something unexpected. A letter, folded, creased, unsigned. He didn't say who gave it to him, only that it had been left anonymously on her cot. She didn't open it at first. Not because she was afraid, but because she'd learned that timing mattered. She slipped it into her chest pocket and went about her day. Training, debriefings, restocking. She reset the suture kits with quiet focus, humming under her breath, blocking out the world like she used to. Then, when night fell, she took the letter outside. She sat under the same tower light she had bled under 6 months ago, the one where she'd torn open her own vest and gritted through the pain without calling for help. Now, it cast a gentler glow. She unfolded the letter slowly. The handwriting was clean, neat, written in black pen, not typed. She read the first line and froze. You saved my brother. You don't know me, but I know you. It wasn't a soldier. It was a civilian. She read on. When we were told he was hit, we were preparing for a funeral, not recovery. They said if he'd been even 30 seconds slower, he'd be gone. He says you walked through fire. I don't know what you are, but I know this. He called you a storm that saved him. Whatever they call you, combat medic, tent girl, ghost eye, hope they understand you're not just one thing. You're the reason my mom still smiles. Thank you. There was no signature. Just a line at the bottom. Keep going. Even if they don't clap. She folded it again and sat with it in her lap. That line stayed with her. Even if they don't clap. It echoed in her mind the next morning when command delivered new orders. She was being reassigned. Not punished. Promoted. Tasked with creating a Combat Medic Readiness Unit C MRU for Advanced Field Deployment. It was the Army's way of saying, We see what you're doing, but now it's ours. A soft takeover. She'd report to a base stateside, train instructors, build curriculum. They even offered her a rank bump. Full warrant. Should have felt like victory. It didn't. She walked to the edge of camp, where the sand turned soft and silent, and sat alone again. She didn't want to teach PowerPoint. She wanted to teach pain, movement, reflex, grit. You couldn't. Print those in a field manual. Back at the tent, her team waited. They already knew something had shifted. Vance, Dunlop, Reza, they all stood in a line, like soldiers waiting for news they didn't want to hear. She told them everything. No one spoke. Finally, Reza asked, "You going?" She didn't answer immediately. Then sighed, "I don't want to." "Then don't," said Vance. Dunlop shook his head. "You don't get it, man. They'll just send someone else. Someone who's not her." Mills looked at her team. She saw the faces she trained, the sweat they shared, the near misses, and the blood they washed from each other's sleeves. She remembered how no one clapped for her that first week, how no one believed the girl with the med patch could ever teach survival. But she had, and maybe now it was time to teach others to teach it. She sighed. "I'll go, but only if you come with me." The teen blinked. She grinned. "I'll need instructors." 2 weeks later, they boarded a transport plane, headed home. No fanfare. No music. Just the low rumble of engines and a dusty wind. Mills carried only 2 things. In her side pouch, her old patch and the letter. Stateside life hit hard. No explosions. No sirens. No sand in her teeth. Just fluorescent lighting and endless memos. New base was quiet, too quiet. She missed the chaos. Still, she worked. She rebuilt every part of her course from memory, from instinct. From every scar, she used broken mannequins, sandbags, and plywood to recreate the urgency of war. She taught speed, not protocol. Movement, not memorization. And when one colonel scoffed, "This isn't medical training, it's boot camp," she simply said, "then send them to the field and see who makes it home." 1 month in, they gave her a class of 20. 10 men, 10 women, all medics, all skeptical. She started with no introductions. Just silence. And she pointed to the center of the mat. She said to the tallest guy, "Try to take me down." He laughed, then lunged. He never touched her. 8 seconds later, she had him pinned, breathless, and the class was silent again, this time in awe. She stood and said, "Welcome to the war you didn't train for. Until now." That night, she went back to her quarters, exhausted, hands bruised but heart steady. She pinned the letter to her mirror, not because she needed motivation, but because someone else might. The next morning, she arrived at class early and found one of her trainees, Private Sierra, already practicing disarms in the dirt by herself. Mills didn't say a word. She just watched and smiled, because the next generation was already waking up different. The room was silent as the last trainee left. Mills stood alone in the dim light, her shadow stretching long across the worn training mats. Months had passed since the fight in the med tent, since the ambush outside the base, since the patch and the letter. She'd traveled miles both across continents and inside herself. But now, she felt the weight of something deeper. Legacy. She wasn't the girl who surprised everyone anymore. The nickname 8 had become a legend whispered across bases, shared in stories around campfires, written in training manuals no one dared discard. But she never sought fame. She never wanted the spotlight. She simply wanted to prepare the ones who would walk into hell and come back alive. As she folded up the mats, her phone buzzed. A text from Dunlop. "Mission coming up, you in?" Her fingers hovered over the screen. Part of her ached to say no. She'd grown used to the quiet routine of training, the controlled chaos of classrooms and practice drills. But another part remembered the heat, the grit, the rush of rushing to those who needed her most. She typed back simply, always. Days later, she found herself back on the tarmac, gear strapped tight, heart steady, but eyes sharp. The team was smaller than before, veterans handpicked for this deployment, a mix of medics and combat support specialists, trained under her watch. This wasn't just any mission. Intel had confirmed a high-value target was hiding deep inside hostile territory, surrounded by enemy forces. Extraction would be brutal. Casualties likely. Mills didn't flinch. This was why she trained them. The helicopter's blades sliced through the thick night air as they descended behind enemy lines. Silence reigned, broken only by whispered commands and the crunch of boots on gravel. Minutes later, the firefight erupted. Bullets whizzed, explosions cracked the sky, and soldiers scrambled under relentless fire. Mills moved with surgical precision. She found the wounded quickly, one with shrapnel in his chest, another with a shattered femur. Her hands worked with trained speed, patching, packing, stabilizing. But this time, there was no need to fight off drunks in her tent. No need to prove herself to skeptical brass. Her team moved seamlessly, each medic a reflection of the lessons she'd hammered into them. Speed, courage, calm. In the chaos, a young corporal called out, "Medic, over here." Mills sprinted through the smoke and debris, reaching him just as the sniper fire intensified. The corporal was pale, barely conscious, blood soaking his uniform. She secured his airway, applied a tourniquet, embarked into her comms for extraction. Coordinates. The firefight raged, but the team held the line, buying just enough time. When the helicopter lifted them out, Mills felt the familiar surge of relief and exhaustion. Back at base, as medics unloaded stretchers and soldiers debriefed, the CO approached her. He nodded once, a look of respect that needed no words. Later, Dunlop clapped her on the shoulder. "You're still the storm, you know." She smiled faintly. "I don't have to be." Weeks passed. The Combat Medic Readiness Unit grew stronger, more respected. Other bases requested training. Soldiers who once doubted now sought her advice. The patch with the red cross and tally marks became a symbol, not just of her story, but of every medic willing to step beyond the expected. One afternoon, as Mills reviewed lesson plans, a small package arrived. Inside was a framed photo. It was her grandfather, a man who'd taught her about quiet strength and sacrifice. Underneath, a simple note: "You are the healing hands and fierce heart. Your fight is his legacy." Mills touched the frame gently. Her journey had come full circle. She wasn't just the med tent girl anymore. She was a guardian, a mentor, a legacy in the shadows. And for every soldier who'd ever bled and survived, she was the reason they got to stand and fight another day. The end.